Welcome, fellow fans and dreamers, to a twilight journey through the hidden mysteries and forgotten secrets of Hawkins, Indiana. Tonight, we drift through the fascinating world behind the cameras, exploring the untold stories, surprising facts, and gentle revelations that shaped the beloved series we know as Stranger Things. From casting coincidences to behind-the-scenes magic, from real-world inspirations to creative decisions that changed everything, we'll wander through these discoveries with the peaceful rhythm of bedtime contemplation. So settle into your favorite spot, let your mind drift like spores floating through dimensions, and allow these fascinating facts to carry you into restful dreams as we explore the secrets behind Hawkins' most extraordinary tales. The genesis of what would become Stranger Things began not in the fictional town of Hawkins, Indiana, but in the creative minds of two brothers who understood that the most powerful stories emerge from the collision between childhood wonder and adult understanding of darkness. Matt and Ross Duffer had spent years working in the shadows of Hollywood, contributing their talents to projects that belonged to other visionaries, but carrying within themselves the dream of creating something that would capture the essence of the stories that had shaped their own youth during those magical summers when anything seemed possible and every shadow held potential for adventure. Their journey toward creating the phenomenon that would captivate millions began during their time working on Wayward Pines, a mysterious thriller that served as both professional opportunity and creative training ground. The experience provided them with invaluable education in the mechanics of television production, but more importantly, it connected them with mentors who recognized their potential for independent storytelling. The guidance they received during this period would prove crucial when they eventually found themselves pitching their own vision to networks that seemed determined to squeeze their creative ambitions into predetermined commercial formulas. The original concept that would eventually evolve into Stranger Things bore little resemblance to the small-town Indiana setting that fans have come to love. In those early brainstorming sessions, the Duffer brothers envisioned their supernatural tale unfolding against the backdrop of Montauk, a beachside community on Long Island where summer tourists mingled with year-round residents, harboring secrets that went far deeper than simple small-town gossip. This coastal setting carried its own atmospheric possibilities, with fog rolling in from the Atlantic Ocean, providing natural cover for mysterious phenomena, while the transient nature of beach communities offered perfect camouflage for government experiments that required isolation and discretion. The choice of Montauk as their initial setting reflected more than simple geographic preference. It represented their fascination with real-world conspiracy theories that suggested truth could be stranger than any fiction they might devise. The Montauk Project, a collection of alleged government experiments involving time travel, psychological warfare, and contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, provided the perfect foundation for their supernatural narrative. These conspiracy theories, however outlandish they might seem to skeptical minds, contained elements of documented historical fact that made them compelling starting points for fictional exploration. The brothers understood that the most effective fantasy grows from seeds of recognizable reality, and their research into actual government programs like MK Ultra revealed a disturbing pattern of experimentation on unwilling subjects that provided all the inspiration they needed for their fictional Hawkins National Laboratory. The documented cases of children subjected to psychological manipulation and pharmaceutical testing in the name of national security created a historical foundation that made their supernatural elements feel grounded in plausible, scientific ethics violations rather than pure fantasy invention. When the time came to pitch their vision to television networks, the Duffer brothers encountered a frustrating reality that would test their commitment to their creative vision. Network after network, 15 in total, rejected their proposal, not because the concept lacked merit, but because it defied the conventional wisdom about what audiences wanted to watch. Programming executives, comfortable with proven formulas and risk-averse by professional necessity, suggested that the brothers choose between creating an adult drama or a children's show, but refused to consider the possibility that audiences might embrace a story that honored both perspectives simultaneously. These rejections carried with them the implicit message that television audiences were too unsophisticated to appreciate narrative complexity, that viewers required simple demographic targeting rather than universal themes that could resonate across age groups. The brothers found themselves repeatedly explaining that their vision deliberately blurred the boundaries between adult and child perspectives because the most memorable stories of their own youth had respected their intelligence while acknowledging their emotional vulnerabilities. The persistence required to continue pitching after multiple rejections demanded a level of faith in their vision that went beyond simple professional ambition. Each meeting with network executives represented an opportunity to find someone who shared their understanding that great storytelling transcends demographic categories. But each rejection also reinforced the industry's tendency to reduce creative works to marketable formulas, rather than trusting in the power of authentic storytelling to find its own audience. The breakthrough that would change everything came through their connection with Sean Levy and Dan Cohen, industry professionals who possessed both the creative insight to recognize the potential in the Duffer Brothers' vision and the practical experience to help transform that vision into producible reality. Levy's immediate grasp of what the script was attempting to achieve represented more than simple professional approval. It validated the brothers' belief that their story could work if presented to the right audience through the right medium. The partnership with Levy and Cohen opened doors that had previously remained closed, but more importantly, it connected the brothers with Netflix at a moment when the streaming service was actively seeking content that would distinguish it from traditional television networks. The timing proved perfect, as Netflix's commitment to original programming aligned with their need for shows that could demonstrate the platform's willingness to take creative risks that broadcast networks avoided. The pitch presentation that ultimately sold the show to Netflix demonstrated the power of visual storytelling to communicate concepts that words alone could not fully convey. Rather than simply describing their intentions, the newly assembled team created a sizzle reel filled with clips from classic films that would establish the tone and imagery they hoped to achieve. This compilation included moments from the movies that had inspired their vision, sequences that captured the wonder, terror, and emotional authenticity they intended to bring to their own work. The sizzle reel served multiple purposes simultaneously, providing network executives with concrete examples of the aesthetic they were pursuing, while demonstrating their deep understanding of the cinematic influences that had shaped their creative sensibilities. By showing rather than telling, they could communicate the emotional register they intended to achieve, making it easier for decision-makers to envision how their story would translate to the screen. The transition from Montauk to Hawkins represented more than simple location scouting practicality. It marked a fundamental shift in the creative approach that would ultimately strengthen the entire project. When production requirements made it clear that filming in Atlanta would be more feasible than shooting on Long Island, the brothers initially resisted changing a setting they had grown attached to through months of development work. The coastal atmosphere of Montauk had become integral to their vision, and abandoning it felt like betraying the concept that had sustained them through multiple rejections. However, the forced relocation to a fictional Indiana town ultimately provided creative opportunities that a real location never could have offered. By inventing Hawkins rather than adapting an existing community, they gained the freedom to modify geography, history, and social dynamics to serve their storytelling needs without worrying about contradicting documented reality or offending actual residents. This fictional setting allowed them to create a community that felt authentically Midwestern while incorporating elements that would have seemed implausible in a real town with verifiable history and established character. The name change from Montauk to Stranger Things reflected similar creative evolution, as the brothers discovered that their original title, while meaningful to them, failed to communicate the show's appeal to potential viewers unfamiliar with obscure conspiracy theories. The new title carried broader implications while maintaining the sense of mystery that drew audiences into unexplored territory. Market research and focus group testing might have led them to this conclusion more efficiently, but their organic discovery of the title's effectiveness felt more authentic to their creative process. The influence of Stephen King on their developing vision cannot be overstated, as his novels provided both inspiration and validation for their belief that horror could be deeply human rather than simply shocking. King's ability to ground supernatural events in recognizable small-town American life offered a template for how they might balance fantastic elements with emotional authenticity. His work demonstrated that readers would accept extraordinary premises if the characters' responses felt genuine, and the community dynamics reflected believable human behavior patterns. The visual homage to King's work extended beyond simple literary influence to include direct aesthetic references, particularly in their use of the Firestarter book cover design as inspiration for their own promotional materials. This visual connection served as both artistic homage and strategic positioning, signaling to potential viewers that their show would deliver the same combination of supernatural thrills and emotional depth that King's best work provided. The decision to maintain an unusually small production team reflected their commitment to preserving the intimate creative dynamic that had generated their original vision. Rather than expanding into the kind of large, committee-driven production structure that often dilutes creative vision through compromise and consensus building, they chose to work with just 4 core decision-makers who shared their aesthetic sensibilities and understood their thematic intentions. This approach required each team member to wear multiple hats and accept broader responsibilities than they might carry in larger productions, but it ensured that every creative decision would reflect their unified vision rather than the averaged preferences of a larger group. The technical challenge of achieving a vintage film aesthetic through modern digital production methods required innovative approaches that honored their artistic intentions while acknowledging practical budget constraints. Rather than shooting on actual film stock, which would have been prohibitively expensive for a television production, they developed post-production techniques that could recreate the grain structure and color saturation that characterized the movies that had inspired their vision. This hybrid approach allowed them to achieve the nostalgic visual quality they desired while maintaining the flexibility and cost-effectiveness that digital production provided. The success of their eventual Netflix debut validated every creative decision they had made during those difficult months of network rejections and location changes. Their persistence in maintaining their vision despite industry pressure to conform to conventional formulas proved that audiences were indeed hungry for the kind of storytelling that honored both adult sophistication and childlike wonder. The phenomenon that Stranger Things became demonstrated that the most successful creative works often emerge from the refusal to accept limitations that others consider immutable, and that the most authentic stories grow from creators who trust their own instincts, even when industry professionals suggest different approaches. The legacy of those early creative decisions continues to influence how the series develops, as each subsequent season builds upon the foundation of creative integrity and authentic storytelling that characterized their original pitch. The world of Hawkins that emerged from those initial brainstorming sessions has become a cultural touchstone precisely because its creators refused to compromise their vision in service of conventional commercial wisdom, choosing instead to trust that audiences would respond to stories that treated them as intelligent, emotionally complex individuals capable of appreciating narrative sophistication, regardless of their age or demographic category. The creation of the monsters that would terrorize Hawkins required a delicate balance between practical artistry and budgetary reality, transforming the Duffer Brothers' nightmarish visions into tangible creatures that could convince audiences while remaining achievable within television production constraints. The partnership with Spectral Motion, the legendary effects company responsible for bringing Guillermo del Toro's most memorable creatures to life, represented a crucial alliance between television ambition and film quality craftsmanship that would establish the visual foundation for everything supernatural that audiences would encounter in the world of Stranger Things. Mike Elizalde and his team at Spectral Motion approached the Demogorgon's design with the understanding that television monsters face unique challenges compared to their cinematic counterparts. Movie creatures might appear for mere minutes of screen time, allowing filmmakers to hide imperfections through careful lighting and brief exposure, but television monsters must withstand prolonged scrutiny under varied lighting conditions while maintaining their terrifying impact across multiple episodes and seasons. This durability requirement demanded construction techniques that prioritized both visual impact and practical functionality, ensuring that the creature could perform reliably during the extended shooting schedules that television production demanded. The design philosophy that guided the Demogorgon's creation reflected the Duffer Brothers' deep understanding of how childhood imagination processes fear and wonder. Rather than pursuing the grotesque complexity that characterizes many modern horror designs, they insisted on a silhouette that children could easily recognize and recreate in their own drawings. This accessibility requirement meant that every design element needed to serve dual purposes: frightening enough to create genuine terror, yet simple enough that young viewers could capture its essence with crayons and construction paper during the inevitable playground discussions that would follow each episode's broadcast. The iconic petal-faced design that emerged from this philosophy drew inspiration from multiple natural sources, combining the predatory opening of carnivorous plants with the aggressive posturing of threatened animals to create something that felt biologically plausible, despite its obviously supernatural origins. The creature's ability to open its face like a blooming flower suggested both vulnerability and aggression, creating visual contradiction that made audiences uncertain whether they were witnessing predation or communication attempts from an entity whose motivations remained fundamentally alien. The practical construction challenges involved in creating a creature head that could convincingly open and close required innovative mechanical solutions that would remain hidden from camera view while providing the smooth, organic movement that the story demanded. Traditional animatronic approaches would have created mechanical sounds and visible joint lines that would destroy the illusion of living tissue. So the effects team developed hybrid techniques that combined radio-controlled mechanisms with manual puppetry to achieve the fluid motion that made the Demogorgon's facial transformations feel genuinely biological rather than obviously artificial. The psychological impact of working with such an intensely frightening creation on the young actors required careful management from both the effects team and the production staff, who understood that traumatizing child performers would be both ethically unacceptable and practically counterproductive. The solution they developed involved creating a mythology around the creature that transformed it from pure threat into something more complex and approachable, telling the frightened young actors that the Demogorgon was actually a misunderstood character from Monsters, Inc., who had simply gotten lost and was trying to find his way home to his friend John Goodman. This creative recontextualization allowed the children to maintain their natural fear responses during actual filming, while preventing the kind of lasting psychological impact that might result from repeated exposure to genuinely traumatic imagery. The technique demonstrated sophisticated understanding of child psychology, acknowledging that young actors needed emotional protection without completely eliminating the authentic fear responses that would make their performances convincing to audiences who had no access to the comforting backstory. The extensive world-building document that the Duffer Brothers developed to support their creature creation reflected their commitment to internal consistency and logical development of their supernatural mythology. This 30-page manuscript detailed not just the Demogorgon's physical characteristics and behavioral patterns, but the entire ecosystem of the Upside Down, including environmental factors that would influence creature evolution, energy sources that sustained alien life forms, and reproductive cycles that would determine how supernatural threats might multiply and spread throughout their fictional universe. The document served multiple practical purposes beyond simple creative organization, providing reference material for effects artists who needed to understand how their creatures would interact with environments and other characters, while also ensuring that future story developments would remain consistent with established mythological principles. The level of detail involved in this world-building exceeded what most television productions would consider necessary, but the investment in comprehensive background development would prove invaluable as the series expanded and required increasingly complex creature interactions. The initial decision to avoid showing the Upside Down entirely reflected budget concerns and technical limitations that might have made the alternate dimension appear cheap or unconvincing if attempted with insufficient resources. The brothers understood that audiences would prefer to imagine mysterious locations rather than witness poorly executed versions that would damage the story's credibility, so their original plan involved keeping the supernatural realm entirely off-screen while allowing character reactions and dialogue to suggest its terrifying nature. However, once they developed practical techniques that could convincingly portray the alternate dimension within their budget constraints, the creative opportunities that the Upside Down provided proved too valuable to waste. The ability to physically transport audiences into the monster's domain opened narrative possibilities that purely implied horror could never match, allowing for direct confrontations between human characters and alien environments that would become some of the series' most memorable and emotionally powerful sequences. The aesthetic inspiration drawn from the Silent Hill video game series reflected the Duffer Brothers' understanding that effective horror often emerges from the corruption of familiar environments, rather than the creation of entirely alien landscapes. Silent Hill's genius lay in its transformation of recognizable American small-town imagery into something subtly wrong and deeply unsettling, creating unease through environmental details that suggested decay and abandonment rather than relying on obvious monster attacks to generate fear. The practical construction of the Upside Down sets required innovative approaches that could create the impression of vast, corrupted landscapes while working within the confined spaces that television budgets typically provided. The solution involved forced perspective techniques, strategic lighting, and atmospheric effects that could suggest infinite vistas of decay and corruption, while actually filming in relatively small, constructed environments that maximized visual impact through careful design and clever camera work. The floating spores that became such an iconic visual element of the Upside Down presented unique technical challenges, as traditional special effects approaches would have been either too expensive or too obviously artificial to maintain the series' commitment to believable supernatural elements. The low-tech solution that the effects team developed involved crew members positioned outside camera range, using fans and manual manipulation to create particle movement that appeared organic and purposeful rather than mechanically generated. demonstrating how creative problem-solving could achieve impressive results without requiring expensive digital effects. The behind-the-scenes reality of these atmospheric effects created working conditions that bore little resemblance to the eerie beauty that audiences would eventually see, with crew members constantly adjusting purple pipes, managing particle distribution systems, and coordinating fan placement to create environmental effects that would disappear entirely in post-production. The unglamorous reality of practical effects work required cast and crew to maintain their performance, energy, and emotional investment, despite working in environments that looked more like amateur theatre productions than professional film sets. Jonathan Glazer's film Under the Skin provided crucial inspiration for the sensory deprivation sequences that would become central to Eleven's character development and the series' exploration of psychic abilities. Glazer's use of absolute darkness, punctuated by minimal lighting, created psychological spaces that felt both infinite and claustrophobic, suggesting vast interior landscapes that existed beyond normal physical limitations while maintaining the intimacy necessary for character-focused storytelling. The translation of this cinematic technique to television production required modifications that would work within episodic storytelling constraints while maintaining the emotional impact that made the original film sequences so powerful. The challenge involved creating visual environments that could support extended character interactions without becoming repetitive or losing their mysterious atmosphere through overexposure, ensuring that each visit to the psychic void would feel fresh and significant rather than routine or predictable. The Demogorgon's origins in Dungeons & Dragons mythology provided both creative foundation and marketing opportunity, connecting the series to an established fantasy tradition while introducing supernatural elements that would feel familiar to audience members who had experience with role-playing games. The creature's status as a prince of demons in the game's cosmology suggested power levels and motivational complexity that could support extended storytelling development, while its established visual characteristics provided starting points for the more detailed creature design that television production required. The practical challenges involved in bringing Jamie Campbell Bower's Vecna to life during the series' later seasons demonstrated the evolution of the production's effects capabilities from the relatively simple Demogorgon to increasingly complex creature work that could support major character development and extended screen time. The 5 to 9 hour daily makeup and prosthetics process required to transform Bower into the supernatural antagonist represented a significant investment in practical effects that honored the series' commitment to tangible creature work while acknowledging the increased budget and production resources that the show's success had provided. The endurance required from performers undergoing such extensive daily transformation processes cannot be underestimated, as actors must maintain their creative energy and emotional availability despite spending the majority of their working day in makeup chairs being painted, sculpted, and fitted with prosthetic elements that restrict movement and sensory input. Bower's dedication to this process demonstrated the kind of professional commitment that makes practical effects work successful, as even the most sophisticated creature designs fail if the performers inside them cannot convey genuine emotion and believable character motivations. The hybrid approach that emerged from the series' evolution, from purely practical effects towards selective digital enhancement, reflected the Duffer Brothers' growing understanding of how different techniques could be combined to achieve results that neither approach could accomplish alone. Rather than abandoning their practical effects philosophy entirely, they learned to identify specific elements that benefited from digital manipulation, while maintaining their commitment to tangible creature work wherever possible. creating a visual style that honored both their original aesthetic vision and the expanded possibilities that increased resources provided. The documentation and preservation of creature design elements for future reference and potential merchandise development required careful attention to details that might seem insignificant during production, but would prove crucial for maintaining visual consistency across multiple seasons and various media applications. The investment in comprehensive creature documentation ensured that future effects work could maintain the established visual standards, while allowing for evolutionary development that would keep the supernatural elements fresh and surprising for audiences who had grown familiar with earlier creature designs. The workshop atmosphere that Spectral Motion created during creature development sessions fostered collaborative problem-solving that allowed creative input from multiple specialists working together towards shared aesthetic goals. This collaborative approach produced innovations that individual artists working in isolation might never have discovered, demonstrating how effective creature work emerges from team efforts that combine technical expertise with creative vision and practical production understanding. The legacy of the Monster Workshop approach that characterized Stranger Things' early seasons continues to influence how the series approaches supernatural elements, maintaining the commitment to practical craftsmanship and tangible creature work that distinguished it from other supernatural television productions that rely primarily on digital effects to create their otherworldly elements. This ongoing dedication to hands-on creature creation ensures that the series maintains the tactile quality and authentic fear responses that made its early monsters so memorable and effective. The decision to center Stranger Things around child actors represented one of the riskiest creative choices the Duffer Brothers could have made, flying in the face of industry wisdom that suggested young performers were unreliable, limited in their emotional range, and prone to the kind of unpredictable behavior that could derail entire productions. The entertainment industry's general skepticism toward child-centric narratives stemmed from decades of failed projects where inexperienced young actors had struggled to carry the emotional weight that compelling storytelling demanded, creating productions that felt artificial and unconvincing despite elaborate sets and sophisticated special effects. The brothers understood that their entire vision would succeed or fail based on audiences' ability to believe in and care about the group of friends whose supernatural adventures would drive the narrative forward. If even one of the central child characters failed to convince viewers of their authenticity, the entire emotional foundation of the series would crumble, reducing what they hoped would be a moving exploration of friendship and courage to mere genre exercise with limited emotional impact. This recognition of how crucial casting would be to their success motivated them to invest extraordinary time and resources in finding exactly the right young performers, even when industry professionals suggested that such perfectionism was impractical for television production schedules. The audition process that would ultimately discover the core group began before many of the scripts had been completed, with potential cast members reading dialogue adapted from Rob Reiner's Stand By Me, the film that had perhaps most successfully captured the authentic dynamics of childhood friendship under pressure. This choice of audition material served multiple purposes, providing the Duffer Brothers with insight into how young actors would handle the kind of emotional authenticity their own scripts would require, while also testing their ability to deliver dialogue that felt natural rather than performed. The use of Stand By Me dialogue also functioned as an indirect communication tool, signaling to young actors and their representatives the emotional register and thematic depth that the series would explore. Rather than auditioning with generic, child-appropriate material, potential cast members were immediately introduced to content that respected their intelligence and emotional capacity, while challenging them to demonstrate the kind of nuanced performance that would be required throughout the series. Run. The group chat that the young actors created among themselves before production began demonstrated their intuitive understanding of the collaborative spirit that would be necessary for their characters' relationships to feel genuine on screen. This stranger text communication channel allowed them to develop friendships and inside jokes that would inform their performances while creating the kind of shared experiences that would translate into believable camaraderie. When cameras started rolling, the organic development of these real friendships among the cast members provided an invaluable foundation that no amount of acting, coaching, or director guidance could have replicated. When audiences watched Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Will interact on screen, they were witnessing genuine affection and familiarity that had developed through months of shared experiences, creating an authenticity that elevated every scene involving the group dynamics that formed the series' emotional core. The casting triumph that brought Millie Bobby Brown to the role of Eleven emerged from a process that involved over 1,200 young actresses auditioning for the central female role, each hoping to land the part that would launch their professional careers, while contributing to a project whose success was far from guaranteed. The sheer volume of auditions reflected both the intense competition for prominent roles and the Duffer Brothers' commitment to finding precisely the right performer, regardless of how long the search might take, or how many industry professionals might suggest they settle for acceptable rather than perfect casting. Brown's auditions stood out not just for her natural acting ability, but for her intuitive understanding of the character's complex emotional landscape, demonstrating an ability to convey vulnerability and strength simultaneously that would prove crucial for audiences' connection to Eleven's journey from laboratory victim to surrogate family member. Her performance during the casting process suggested that she possessed the emotional maturity necessary to handle storylines involving trauma and abuse while maintaining the innocence that made Eleven's wonder at ordinary experiences genuinely moving. The validation that Brown's casting received from Stephen King himself provided external confirmation of the Duffer Brothers' instincts, while generating publicity that would prove invaluable when the series eventually premiered. King's Twitter endorsement of the young actress's performance in the previous television series, Intruders, carried enormous weight within the horror and science fiction communities, lending credibility to the casting choice while connecting the upcoming series to the literary tradition that had inspired its creation. King's praise also served as early indication that established figures within the genre recognized the potential quality of the developing project, providing encouragement to the production team during the uncertain period when they were creating something unprecedented without guarantee of audience acceptance or critical approval. The endorsement from such a respected figure helped validate their approach to child-centered supernatural storytelling, while generating anticipation among fans who trusted King's judgment about effective horror narratives. The remarkable coincidence that connected Finn Wolfhard to both Stranger Things and the IT remake demonstrated how interconnected the entertainment industry could be, particularly within specific genres where casting directors and producers often worked on multiple related projects. Wolfhard's initial casting in IT, which was then delayed due to production scheduling challenges, created the opening that allowed him to audition for Mike Wheeler, ultimately landing him in a position where he would contribute to two major Stephen King-related projects that would define his early career. This dual casting also reflected the industry's recognition of Wolfhard's particular talents for conveying the kind of earnest determination and loyal friendship that both Mike Wheeler and the Children of Derry would require. His ability to balance humor and sincerity while maintaining believable relationships with ensemble casts made him an ideal choice for projects that depended on group dynamics and authentic emotional connections between young characters facing extraordinary circumstances. The transformation of Steve Harrington from irredeemable antagonist to beloved ensemble member represented one of the most successful character evolution arcs in the series' history, demonstrating how the right casting choice could inspire script changes that improved the overall narrative while providing opportunities for performer growth that benefited both individual careers and audience satisfaction. Joe Keery's natural likability and comedic timing made it impossible for the creative team to maintain their original plan of using his character purely as obstacle to the protagonist's goals. The recognition that Keery brought qualities to the role that the original conception had not anticipated led to script revisions that would ultimately strengthen the entire series by adding layers of character development and relationship dynamics that enriched the storytelling possibilities available in future seasons. Rather than discarding a performer who did not match their preconceived notions, the Duffer Brothers demonstrated creative flexibility by adapting their vision to incorporate the unexpected strengths that emerged during the collaborative process of bringing characters to life. The immediate recognition that Gaten Matarazzo was perfect for Dustin Henderson reflected both his natural performance abilities and the production team's commitment to inclusive casting that represented the full spectrum of childhood experiences rather than limiting themselves to conventionally attractive or physically typical young actors. Matarazzo's cleidocranial dysplasia, rather than being viewed as casting limitation, became integral to his character's identity and provided representation for young viewers who rarely saw characters with similar conditions portrayed in mainstream entertainment. The decision to write Dustin's condition into the character, rather than asking Matarazzo to hide or minimize it, demonstrated the series' commitment to authentic representation while creating opportunities for educational awareness that would benefit audiences unfamiliar with cleidocranial dysplasia. This approach honored the actor's real experience while contributing to broader cultural understanding and acceptance of physical differences that are often overlooked or misrepresented in popular media. The method acting approach that David Harbour adopted for his portrayal of Jim Hopper created an interesting dynamic between the adult and child cast members that served the story while providing valuable learning experiences for the young boy, performers who would spend multiple years working alongside him. Harbour's decision to maintain distance from the children during early filming periods helped establish the gruff, intimidating authority figure that the script required, while teaching the young actors how professional boundaries could enhance, rather than inhibit, creative collaboration. The evolution of Harbour's relationship with his younger co-stars paralleled Hopper's character development from suspicious law enforcement official to protective father figure, creating authentic progression in both the performed relationships and the real dynamics that informed those performances. This organic development demonstrated how thoughtful professional choices could support narrative goals while fostering the kind of mentoring relationships that would benefit young performers throughout their careers. Harbour's emotional response to watching his own rescue of Will in the completed episode revealed the depth of his investment in the character and story, suggesting that his method approach had created genuine emotional connections that transcended professional obligation. His surprise at being moved by his own performance indicated that the collaborative creative process had produced results that exceeded his expectations, validating the intensive preparation work he had invested in developing Hopper's complex psychology. The casting of Winona Ryder brought established star power and critical credibility to the project, while requiring significant adjustments in her approach to television production and streaming media distribution. Ryder's unfamiliarity with Netflix and streaming platforms reflected the rapid changes occurring in entertainment industry distribution models, requiring veteran performers to adapt their understanding of how audiences would discover and consume their work. Ryder's extensive film experience provided valuable mentorship opportunities for her younger co-stars while requiring her to adjust her performance techniques for the different pacing and character development possibilities that television's longer narrative format provided. Her ability to adapt her considerable dramatic skills to episodic storytelling while maintaining the emotional intensity that had defined her most memorable film performances demonstrated professional versatility that enhanced the entire production's credibility. The character adjustments that were made to Joyce Byers to better suit Ryder's natural performance style illustrated the collaborative nature of successful casting, with the creative team recognizing that their original conception could be improved by incorporating the specific strengths that each performer brought to their roles. The evolution of Joyce from stereotypical Long Island personality to more nuanced Midwestern mother created opportunities for emotional depth that served both the character's narrative function and Ryder's particular talents. Shannon Purser's journey from unknown performer to Emmy-nominated actress through her brief but memorable portrayal of Barb Holland demonstrated how even limited screen time could create lasting cultural impact when supported by authentic performance and writing that respected character. Dignity. Purser's background working at a movie theater provided her with practical understanding of audience responses and entertainment industry dynamics that informed her approach to professional development following her unexpected breakthrough. The cultural phenomenon that emerged around the Justice for Barb movement reflected audiences' emotional investment in characters who represented authentic teenage experiences rather than idealized versions of adolescence. Purser's portrayal of the loyal friend whose death went largely unnoticed by other characters resonated with viewers who identified with feeling overlooked or undervalued, creating connection that transcended the character's limited narrative function. The salary evolution that carried the young cast members from $30,000 per episode in the first season to multi-million-dollar total compensation packages by the fifth season reflected both the series' commercial success and the industry's recognition of how crucial these specific performers had become to the property's value. This financial progression provided life-changing opportunities for the young actors while creating incentives for continued participation that ensured cast stability throughout the series' planned run. The professional development that occurred as these young performers matured from children into adults while maintaining their central roles in a major entertainment franchise created unique challenges and opportunities that required careful management from both their representatives and the booze. Production team. The series' extended production schedule meant that audiences would witness actual growth and development alongside the fictional character evolution, creating unusual authenticity in the portrayal of adolescent experiences. The group dynamic that developed among the young cast members created a supportive environment where they could navigate the challenges of growing up in the public eye while maintaining the friendships that had made their on-screen relationships so convincing. This mutual support system proved invaluable as they faced the pressures and opportunities that accompanied their unexpected fame, providing stability during a period when many child actors struggle with the transition to adult careers and responsibilities. The casting legacy that Stranger Things established influenced industry approaches to child-centered projects, while demonstrating that audiences would embrace complex, emotionally sophisticated storytelling that respected young characters' intelligence and agency rather than patronizing them through simplified plots or condescending dialogue. The success of this approach encouraged other productions to invest greater resources in discovering and developing young talent, while treating child actors as genuine creative collaborators rather than merely decorative elements in adult-designed narratives. The art of performance within the supernatural landscape of Stranger Things demanded techniques and commitments that pushed every actor beyond conventional television requirements, creating challenges that ranged from the purely physical to the deeply psychological. As performers navigated the complexities of bringing authentic humanity to circumstances that existed far beyond ordinary human experience. The success of these performances depended not only on traditional acting skills, but on each performer's ability to find emotional truth within fantastical situations, while maintaining the grounded reality that made audiences believe in the impossible events unfolding before their eyes. Millie Bobby Brown's portrayal of Eleven presented perhaps the most daunting performance challenge in the entire series, requiring her to convey complex emotions, intricate relationships, and significant character development using primarily facial expressions and physical gestures, rather than the spoken dialogue that most actors rely upon to communicate their characters' internal states. The restriction to minimal verbal communication forced Brown to develop extraordinary subtlety in her physical performance, learning to convey fear, confusion, anger, love, and determination through micro-expressions and body language that would register clearly on camera without becoming theatrical or artificial. The training required to master this wordless communication style involved intensive work with movement coaches and acting instructors who specialized in physical storytelling techniques, helping Brown understand how different emotional states would manifest in posture, gesture, and facial expression. This education in non-verbal performance proved invaluable not only for her work on Stranger Things, but for her development as an actress capable of handling complex dramatic material that required sophisticated understanding of how audiences read and interpret physical cues. The statistical reality that Eleven spoke only 246 words throughout the entirety of the first season, many of which were simple repetitions of basic terms like no and papa, illustrated the enormous responsibility that Brown carried for making this character compelling and sympathetic, despite severe limitations on traditional dialogue-based character development. Every word she spoke carried exceptional weight, requiring careful consideration of timing, inflection, and emotional context to maximize the impact of each rare verbal communication. This economy of language created opportunities for moments of exceptional power when Eleven did speak, with each utterance feeling significant and earned rather than routine or expected. The careful rationing of dialogue forced both the writers and Brown to find alternative methods of character development and audience connection, ultimately creating a more distinctive and memorable characterization than conventional approaches might have achieved. The $8,000 blonde wig that became central to Eleven's disguise sequences represented both practical necessity and creative opportunity, requiring Brown to adjust her performance techniques to accommodate the physical and psychological changes that different appearances would create for her character. The investment in a high-quality hairpiece reflected the production's commitment to maintaining visual authenticity, even in seemingly minor costume elements that could significantly impact audience perception of character transformations. The elaborate backstory that the production team developed to explain the wig's presence in the Wheeler household demonstrated their attention to narrative detail and logical consistency, creating the touching fiction that the hairpiece had belonged to Mike's grandmother, who had worn it during cancer treatment. This invented history added emotional weight to what might otherwise have been merely functional costume choice, providing additional layers of meaning that enriched the storytelling without requiring explicit exposition or explanation. The practical challenges involved in wearing such an expensive and delicate piece required Brown to develop awareness of how her movements and interactions with other performers might affect the wig's position and appearance, adding another layer of technical consideration to performances that already demanded exceptional, emotional, and physical precision. The responsibility for protecting valuable costume elements while maintaining character authenticity created additional pressure that young performers had to manage alongside their primary acting obligations. David Harbour's emotional response to watching his completed performance as Hopper rescuing Will from the Upside Down revealed the depth of psychological investment that effective method acting could create, with the actor becoming so thoroughly identified with his character that he experienced genuine surprise and emotion when viewing the finished scenes. This level of immersion in character psychology demonstrated the commitment required for authentic performance, while illustrating how successful acting could transcend mere professional obligation to become genuine emotional experience. The phenomenon of actors being moved by their own performances suggested that the collaborative creative process had produced results that exceeded individual expectations, with the combination of writing, direction, and performance creating emotional impact that surprised even those responsible for its creation. This kind of creative synergy indicated that the production had achieved the kind of artistic collaboration where individual contributions combined to produce effects greater than the sum of their parts. Harbour's method approach to character development required him to maintain psychological distance from his younger co-stars during early filming, preserving the authentic tension and authority that the story demanded, while gradually allowing warmer relationships to develop as the narrative progressed. This professional discipline demonstrated sophisticated understanding of how off-camera relationships could influence on-screen dynamics, requiring adult actors to make thoughtful choices about personal interactions that would serve the storytelling goals. Charlie Heaton's challenge in disguising his natural British accent for the role of Jonathan Byers created ongoing difficulties that were particularly pronounced when pronouncing certain words, with Nancy becoming the most problematic term due to vowel sounds that consistently triggered his authentic dialect. This linguistic obstacle required extensive dialogue coaching and post-production work to maintain character consistency, while allowing Heaton to deliver natural-sounding American speech patterns throughout extended dialogue sequences. The New Year's Eve incident that singed off the front of Heaton's hair during a production party created practical challenges that required creative solutions, with the production team providing hair extensions for 3 months, while his natural hair regrew to the length necessary for character continuity. This accident illustrated how real-world events could impact production schedules and budgets while requiring flexible problem-solving from costume and makeup departments, who had to maintain visual consistency despite unexpected physical changes. The experience also demonstrated the personal sacrifices and unexpected challenges that could affect performers during extended production periods, requiring adaptation and problem-solving that went beyond traditional acting responsibilities to include management of personal appearance and lifestyle choices that might impact their professional obligations. The commitment required for such adjustments reflected the collaborative nature of television production, where individual problems became shared challenges requiring team solutions. Winona Ryder's single-take success in painting the alphabet on the living room wall during the iconic Christmas lights communication sequence demonstrated both her preparation and the practical pressures of television production, schedules that left little room for multiple attempts at complex practical effects. The challenge of creating neat, readable letters while maintaining character, emotion, and story pacing required exceptional focus and preparation, with no opportunity for correction if the paint application went wrong. The behind-the-scenes reality of this memorable scene involved careful preparation and practice to ensure that Ryder could execute the wall painting while delivering dialogue and maintaining character consistency. with the production team having contingency plans for potential mistakes that might require set reconstruction and additional filming time. The successful completion of this challenging sequence in a single take reflected both professional skill and the kind of collaborative preparation that made complex practical effects possible within television production constraints. Ryder's gift of a vintage Clash t-shirt to Charlie Heaton reflected the generous mentoring relationship that developed between experienced and novice performers, with established actors sharing personal memorabilia that connected to character development while providing tangible links between authentic experience and fictional storytelling. This gesture demonstrated how veteran performers could support their younger colleagues through personal connection and shared cultural references that enriched the collaborative creative process. Dacre Montgomery's approach to developing Billy Hargrove's intimidating presence involved method acting techniques that created authentic menace while requiring careful management to prevent negative impacts on cast relationships and on-set atmosphere. Montgomery's commitment to maintaining character psychology, even between takes, demonstrated professional dedication, while creating challenges for directors and fellow performers who had to navigate the boundaries between character, authenticity, and comfortable working environment. The improvised elements that Montgomery brought to Billy's characterization, including spontaneous actions, like eating a cookie during a flirtation scene with Karen Wheeler, demonstrated how prepared actors could enhance scripted material through authentic character choices that felt organic rather than predetermined. These improvisational moments required trust between actors and directors while creating opportunities for character development that emerged from performance rather than being imposed through writing or direction. Montgomery's suggestion that Billy's violent behavior should be explained through family background and abusive relationships demonstrated sophisticated understanding of character, psychology, and audience empathy, recognizing that viewers would respond more positively to antagonists whose negative behavior emerged from understandable trauma rather than inexplicable evil. This psychological approach to character development created opportunities for redemption and complexity that served both individual character arcs and broader narrative themes. Joseph Quinn's dedication to learning guitar specifically for his role as Eddie Munson illustrated the lengths that committed performers would go to achieve authenticity in their portrayals, investing personal time and effort in developing skills that would enhance character credibility, while providing opportunities for memorable performance moments. Quinn's musical preparation created the foundation for some of the series' most iconic sequences, while demonstrating how individual actor initiative could contribute to overall production quality. The timing of Quinn's guitar education, occurring during the early stages of filming before musical elements had been fully integrated into the scripts, required him to develop skills without complete understanding of how they would be utilized, demonstrating faith in the creative process and willingness to prepare for possibilities rather than waiting for specific requirements. This proactive approach to character development reflected professional dedication that enhanced both individual performance and collaborative storytelling possibilities. Eduardo Franco's mastery of manual transmission driving for his portrayal of Argyle represented another example of actors acquiring practical skills that would serve character authenticity while creating opportunities for enhanced performance during vehicle-based scenes. The commitment to learning stick-shift operation demonstrated attention to realistic detail that audiences might not consciously notice but would contribute to overall believability and character consistency. These technical skill acquisitions reflected the series' commitment to practical authenticity over convenient shortcuts, requiring actors to develop genuine capabilities rather than relying on camera tricks or editing techniques that might preserve the illusion of competence without requiring actual skill development. This approach created more confident and convincing performances, while providing actors with valuable abilities that would serve future professional opportunities. The voice change challenges that affected several young male actors during extended production periods created post-production difficulties that required creative solutions, with editors and sound engineers working to maintain character consistency, despite natural vocal development that occurred as the performers matured. These biological realities of working with adolescent actors required flexible technical approaches that could accommodate natural growth while preserving narrative continuity. The experience of watching their own voices change during production periods provided young actors with unique awareness of their physical development, while creating professional challenges that required adaptation and problem-solving, skills that would serve them throughout their careers. The management of these natural changes within the context of character consistency created learning opportunities that combined personal growth with professional development. The dedication required from performers undergoing extensive makeup and prosthetics processes, particularly Jamie Campbell Bower's transformation into Vecna, demanded physical and psychological endurance that went far beyond conventional acting requirements. The 5 to 9 hour daily preparation process required actors to maintain creative energy and character focus, despite spending most of their working time in makeup chairs being painted and fitted with restrictive costume elements. This commitment to practical character transformation reflected the series' ongoing dedication to tangible effects work, while requiring exceptional professionalism from performers who had to deliver compelling performances after hours of preparation that could be both physically uncomfortable and mentally exhausting. The results of this intensive preparation process created some of the series' most memorable antagonist portrayals, while demonstrating how practical effects work required collaborative commitment from both technical artists and performers. The evolution of performance techniques throughout the series run reflected both individual actor development and the production's growing understanding of how different performance challenges could be managed and supported through improved preparation, technical innovation, and collaborative problem-solving that enhanced both individual achievements and collective storytelling effectiveness. These accumulated improvements created increasingly sophisticated performance opportunities while maintaining the authentic emotional foundation that had made the series successful from its beginning. The daily realities of creating television magic often bore little resemblance to the polished final product that audiences would eventually witness, with behind-the-scenes moments ranging from the hilariously mundane to the surprisingly touching, as cast and crew navigated the peculiar challenges that emerged from bringing supernatural stories to life within the practical constraints of television production schedules and budgets. These unguarded moments between official takes and formal interviews revealed the human dynamics that sustained the collaborative effort required to maintain consistent quality across multiple seasons, while managing the complex logistics of working with young performers, elaborate practical effects, and increasingly ambitious storytelling goals. The infamous school bus evacuation incident that became legendary among cast and crew members demonstrated how the confined spaces required for certain scenes could create unexpected challenges that had nothing to do with supernatural threats or dramatic tension. During filming of sequences that required the young actors to spend extended periods together in the cramped interior of an abandoned school bus, the natural digestive processes of adolescent boys created atmospheric conditions that became genuinely unbearable for everyone involved in the production, forcing a temporary halt to filming while the location was ventilated and the air quality restored to breathable levels. This incident, while amusing in retrospect, illustrated the practical realities of working with young performers who possessed limited awareness of how their personal habits and bodily functions might impact professional environments. The subsequent conversation between directors and young actors about appropriate on-set behavior became one of those teachable moments that helped establish professional standards while acknowledging the natural challenges of expecting children and teenagers to maintain adult levels of consideration and self-control during long working days. The evacuation also demonstrated the collaborative problem-solving spirit that characterized the production, with crew members responding to the crisis with good humor and practical solutions, rather than frustration or blame. This incident became part of the shared mythology that bonded cast and crew together while providing ongoing entertainment through retelling and embellishment that grew more elaborate with each version of the story. The mystery of Millie Bobby Brown's Glitter Day remained unsolved, despite extensive investigation by curious crew members who spent 30 minutes attempting to remove sparkly particles from the young actress before filming could proceed. The source of the glitter never became clear, with Brown herself unable to explain how she had become so thoroughly covered in decorative particles that her removal from the makeup chair required extended effort and specialized cleaning techniques. This incident highlighted the unpredictable nature of working with young performers whose lives outside the production set sometimes intersected with their professional responsibilities in unexpected ways, creating delays and complications that adult actors would typically avoid through more careful personal management. The glitter incident became another piece of production folklore while demonstrating the patience and flexibility required from technical departments who had to adapt to circumstances that fell outside normal preparation and planning protocols. The good-natured response to such incidents reflected the production's commitment to maintaining a supportive environment for young performers while establishing professional standards that would serve their development as actors and as responsible collaborators in creative endeavors. These learning experiences provided valuable education in professional behavior while preserving the playful atmosphere that kept the work environment enjoyable and sustainable for extended production periods. The stark budget contrast between the $1 purchase price of Hopper's trailer and the $8,000 investment in Eleven's blonde wig illustrated the unpredictable economics of television production, where certain essential elements could be acquired for minimal cost, while others required substantial financial commitment, despite their seemingly minor importance to casual observers. This disparity reflected the complex priority calculations that production designers and budget managers had to navigate when allocating limited resources across multiple competing needs. The trailer's bargain price resulted from fortunate timing and location scouting that discovered available properties at prices that seemed almost impossibly low, demonstrating how careful research and flexible scheduling could create opportunities for significant savings that could be redirected toward other production needs. The willingness to transport and modify existing structures rather than building from scratch represented the kind of creative cost management that allowed television productions to achieve cinematic quality within broadcast budgets. The wig's expensive price tag reflected the technical specifications and quality standards necessary for close-up photography and extended use, with cheaper alternatives proving unacceptable for the visual standards that the series required. This investment in seemingly minor costume elements demonstrated the production's commitment to maintaining authenticity and visual quality, even in details that might seem insignificant but would become noticeable to audiences if executed poorly. The 1,200 pounds of Epsom salt required to create the sensory deprivation tank for Eleven's psychic exploration sequences represented both practical necessity and creative opportunity, allowing Millie Bobby Brown to achieve authentic floating without requiring digital effects or complex rigging that might interfere with her performance. The substantial salt investment demonstrated the production's preference for practical solutions that could support authentic actor performance rather than relying on post-production techniques that might compromise emotional authenticity. The physical reality of floating in heavily salted water created genuine sensations that informed Brown's performance while providing visual authenticity that audiences could unconsciously recognize as real rather than artificially generated. This commitment to practical effects work, even in sequences that might seem ideal for digital solutions, reflected the series' ongoing preference for tangible elements that could support actor performance and audience belief simultaneously. The elaborate preparation required for the saltwater sequences included careful monitoring of water temperature and chemical balance to ensure actor safety while maintaining the visual and tactile properties necessary for effective filming. These technical considerations required collaboration between multiple departments, while demonstrating how even seemingly simple practical effects could involve complex logistics and safety protocols. The stuffed Will corpse that became the source of an elaborate practical joke demonstrated how the production team maintained morale and camaraderie through humor that emerged from the darker elements of their storytelling, transforming potentially disturbing props into sources of shared entertainment that bonded cast and crew together. The Duffer Brothers' decision to position the dummy in a closet and surprise Noah Schnapp's visiting mother revealed their playful approach to production management while creating memorable experiences that would become part of the series' informal history. The mother's startled but ultimately amused reaction to discovering the realistic corpse of her son demonstrated the good-natured family atmosphere that surrounded the production, with parents and relatives becoming incorporated into the collaborative spirit that characterized the working environment. Her immediate impulse to photograph and share the surprise with friends illustrated how families became invested in and entertained by the creative process that occupied such a significant portion of their children's lives. The creation of increasingly elaborate practical jokes and surprise moments became part of the production culture, providing stress relief and entertainment during demanding shooting schedules, while fostering the kind of interpersonal connections that translated into authentic on-screen relationships. These shared experiences created bonds that extended beyond professional collaboration to include genuine friendship and mutual support. The decision to use a stunt performer rather than a dummy for underwater corpse scenes reflected the production's commitment to visual authenticity, even when such realism required additional expense and logistical complexity. The use of a living person wearing Noah Schnapp's wig and clothing while submerged in cold water demonstrated the lengths that the production team would go to achieve believable practical effects that could withstand close-up scrutiny without appearing obviously artificial. This commitment to practical authenticity required careful safety protocols and professional stunt coordination to ensure that the performer could remain underwater safely while achieving the lifeless appearance that the story required. The investment in professional stunt work for seemingly simple effects demonstrated the series' understanding that audience belief depended on countless small details that might seem insignificant individually but collectively created the believable world that made supernatural elements acceptable. The contrast between using expensive practical solutions and relying on digital alternatives illustrated ongoing creative philosophy that prioritized tangible authenticity over convenient shortcuts, requiring additional planning and resource allocation, but producing results that contributed to the series' distinctive visual quality and emotional impact. The $220,000 prop budget represented substantial investment in physical elements, while requiring careful management and creative resource allocation to achieve maximum visual impact within financial constraints. The budget limitations forced prop departments to develop innovative sourcing strategies that combine strategic purchases with creative repurposing and modification of existing items to meet specific production needs. The extensive use of eBay and flea market shopping for period-appropriate props demonstrated how careful research and patient hunting could achieve authentic period detail at sustainable costs, with prop masters investing time and expertise to identify suitable items that could be modified or combined to create the specific elements that script and design requirements demanded. This approach required extensive knowledge of period-appropriate materials and design, while demanding flexibility in adapting discovered items to serve production needs. The successful combination of careful shopping and creative modification created prop collections that felt authentically period-appropriate, while remaining within budget constraints that might have seemed impossibly restrictive for productions attempting to recreate detailed historical environments. The prop department's success in creating convincing 1980s atmosphere through strategic acquisition and creative adaptation became a model for other productions facing similar budget challenges. Millie Bobby Brown's practical approach to managing the extensive waffle consumption that her character's scenes required demonstrated professional problem-solving that balanced performance authenticity with personal health considerations. Her technique of chewing and then discreetly spitting food into buckets between takes allowed her to maintain believable eating behavior while avoiding the digestive consequences that would result from consuming the quantities of food that multiple takes and angles typically required. This behind-the-scenes reality of food-centered scenes illustrated how practical considerations often required creative solutions that remained invisible to audiences while enabling performers to maintain consistency across extended filming periods. The collaborative approach to managing such challenges involved technical crew members who could provide appropriate containers and timing that supported actor performance without drawing attention to the practical necessities involved. The contrast between Shannon Purser's experience consuming the artificial vomit mixture composed of baby food, olive oil, and marmalade demonstrated how different performance challenges required different coping strategies, with some actors needing to actually ingest unpleasant substances while others could rely on techniques that avoided direct consumption. These varying approaches reflected individual tolerance levels and practical requirements that had to be accommodated within production schedules. The 20 tons of artificial snow shipped from Florida for winter scenes represented logistical complexity that extended far beyond simple seasonal decoration, requiring coordination between multiple departments and transportation companies to achieve the atmospheric effects that storytelling required. The irony of importing winter weather effects from a tropical climate illustrated the sometimes absurd practical realities of television production that operated according to scheduling and budget constraints rather than natural, seasonal availability. The massive snow installation created temporary transformation of filming locations, while requiring careful management to maintain consistency across multiple shooting days and varying weather conditions that might affect the artificial snow's appearance and behavior. The investment in such elaborate atmospheric effects demonstrated the production's commitment to visual authenticity, even when natural alternatives were unavailable or impractical. The collaboration required to manage such large-scale practical effects involved coordination between location managers, transportation specialists, and technical crew members who had to work within tight schedules to achieve maximum visual impact, while ensuring that expensive materials were used efficiently and effectively. The COVID-19 pandemic's impact on international filming created unprecedented challenges that required innovative solutions and flexible adaptation to maintain production schedules while ensuring cast and crew safety. The separation of filming between different continents for scenes that were meant to appear as single continuous sequences demonstrated how modern technology and creative editing could overcome logistical obstacles that might have been insurmountable in earlier eras of television production. The success in creating seamless scenes despite international separation validated the collaborative skills of editors, directors, and actors who could maintain performance consistency across vast distances and extended time periods. This achievement represented adaptation and problem-solving that would influence future production approaches, while demonstrating how creative teams could overcome seemingly impossible obstacles through flexibility and technological innovation. The invisible nature of these complex logistical solutions to audiences illustrated how successful television production often involved elaborate, behind-the-scenes efforts that remained completely hidden from viewers who experienced only the final seamless results of extensive planning and technical coordination. The accumulation of such behind-the-scenes experiences created shared history and collaborative bonds that strengthened cast and crew relationships while providing ongoing source material for entertainment and storytelling that extended the social connections formed during production periods. These informal networks of shared experience and mutual support became valuable resources for individual career development while contributing to the overall positive atmosphere that made extended collaboration sustainable and enjoyable for everyone involved in the creative process. The sonic landscape that Kyle Dixon and Michael Stein created for Stranger Things emerged from their deep understanding of how synthesized music could serve as an emotional bridge between past and present, connecting audiences to the nostalgic atmosphere of 1980s childhood while providing contemporary dramatic support that enhanced rather than overwhelmed the storytelling. Their work with the band Survive had already established their expertise in creating atmospheric electronic music that drew from vintage synthesizer techniques while incorporating modern production values that could satisfy both purist enthusiasts and casual listeners who simply wanted music that made them feel something profound and authentic. The decision to emphasize John Carpenter's darker horror aesthetic over Steven Spielberg's more optimistic adventure scoring represented a crucial creative choice that would define the series' emotional register and help distinguish it from the countless other projects that had attempted to capture 80s nostalgia through surface-level recreation, rather than genuine understanding of the era's cultural complexity. Carpenter's minimalist approach to electronic scoring had created some of cinema's most memorable and effective horror atmospheres, using simple melodic patterns and rhythmic structures to build tension and unease that felt organic rather than manipulative. The influence of Carpenter's scoring philosophy extended beyond simple musical homage to encompass a broader aesthetic approach that valued atmosphere and mood over conventional dramatic punctuation, allowing scenes to breathe and develop their own internal rhythm, rather than being pushed forward by overbearing musical cues that told audiences how to feel, rather than supporting their natural emotional responses. This restraint in musical application created space for actor performances and environmental details to register with audiences while providing subtle enhancement that enriched rather than dominated the viewing experience. The Texas-based origins of Dixon and Stein's collaboration brought regional musical influences that added authentic American flavor to their synthesized compositions, avoiding the European electronic music traditions that had dominated much horror scoring in favor of approaches that felt grounded in the Midwestern American experience that the series depicted. Their understanding of how electronic music could evoke both futuristic possibilities and nostalgic memory allowed them to create soundscapes that supported the show's central tension between childhood innocence and supernatural threat. The challenge of obtaining licensing rights for the Clash's "Should I Stay or Should I Go" illustrated how crucial musical choices could become complicated by legal and financial considerations that extended far beyond creative preference, requiring negotiation with rights holders who possessed their own concerns about how their intellectual property would be used and represented. The song's thematic relevance to the series' exploration of loyalty, commitment, and difficult choices made it essential to the emotional development of key characters, particularly the relationship between Jonathan and Will Byers. The copyright holder's initial reluctance to license the song stemmed from legitimate concerns about how their property might be used in contexts that could diminish its cultural value or associate it with content that contradicted their artistic intentions. Music supervisor Nora Felder's successful negotiation required her to demonstrate that the series would treat the song with respect while using it to enhance themes of family connection and brotherly love, rather than exploiting it for simple period atmosphere or ironic commentary. The eventual agreement to allow the song's use reflected the rights holders' recognition that the series shared their commitment to authentic emotional expression rather than cynical manipulation of nostalgic associations, creating a collaboration between musical and visual storytelling that honored both artistic visions while serving the larger narrative goals that justified the creative partnership. The successful integration of the song into multiple episodes demonstrated how carefully selected music could become integral to character development and thematic exploration. Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill experienced an extraordinary cultural renaissance through its association with Max Mayfield's character arc, demonstrating how thoughtful musical selection could introduce classic songs to new generations while providing established fans with fresh appreciation for familiar works. The song's journey from number 30 on its original 1985 chart performance to number 1 on contemporary Billboard rankings illustrated the power of narrative context to transform artistic reception and cultural significance. The choice of this particular Kate Bush composition reflected deep understanding of how the song's themes of empathy, sacrifice, and the desire to exchange places with someone you love directly paralleled Max's emotional journey and her relationships with the people who mattered most to her. The lyrics' exploration of making deals with God to swap experiences with another person resonated perfectly with Max's willingness to sacrifice herself to protect her friends while highlighting the futility and beauty of such impossible wishes. The song's integration into Max's escape from Vecna's psychological manipulation created one of the series' most emotionally powerful sequences, while demonstrating how music could function as literal lifeline between dimensions, suggesting that emotional connections could transcend supernatural interference through the power of personal association and memory. The scene's effectiveness depended not only on the song's musical qualities, but on audiences' understanding of what the music meant to Max as individual character, with specific tastes and emotional needs. The cultural phenomenon that emerged around the song's renewed popularity extended far beyond simple nostalgia consumption to encompass genuine appreciation for Kate Bush's artistic vision and musical craftsmanship, introducing her work to listeners who might never have discovered it through conventional means, while providing longtime fans with validation of their sustained appreciation for her unique contributions to popular music. The song's success created opportunities for broader exploration of Bush's catalogue, while demonstrating how television could serve as cultural education platform. The secret communication system that Hopper developed using Morse code knocking patterns reflected his law enforcement background and practical approach to maintaining security while providing comfort to Eleven during her isolation period. The revelation that the knock pattern spelled out "us" in Morse code demonstrated attention to detail that enriched character relationships while providing additional layer of meaning for viewers who possessed the knowledge necessary to decode the message. This hidden communication method illustrated how the series incorporated multiple levels of meaning and connection that rewarded careful attention while remaining accessible to casual viewers who might miss the specific significance but would still understand the emotional importance of the ritual. The Morse code element added authenticity to Hopper's character while demonstrating how his professional skills informed his personal relationships and parenting approaches. The decision to include such specific technical details reflected the writer's commitment to internal logic and character consistency, ensuring that Hopper's actions felt authentic to his background and personality rather than simply serving plot convenience. This attention to character-appropriate behavior helped maintain audience investment in relationships that might otherwise feel artificially constructed for dramatic purposes. The theoretical framework that supported music's ability to bridge dimensional barriers drew from both scientific speculation about frequency resonance and metaphysical concepts about emotional energy, transcending physical limitations. The series' treatment of music as literal supernatural force, rather than simple atmospheric enhancement, created opportunities for plot development that felt both fantastical and emotionally logical, allowing audiences to accept impossible events through familiar emotional mechanisms. The specific frequencies generated by beloved songs appeared to create interference patterns that disrupted supernatural control mechanisms, suggesting that personal emotional associations could generate energy signatures that hostile entities could not replicate or counter effectively. This explanation provided scientific-sounding justification for music's protective properties, while maintaining the series' commitment to grounding fantastic elements in recognizable human experience. The selection criteria for songs that could serve protective functions seemed to depend more on individual emotional connection than musical genre or technical characteristics, indicating that the power resided in personal association rather than inherent musical properties. This approach honored the subjective nature of musical appreciation, while creating opportunities for character development through musical preferences that revealed personality traits and emotional priorities. The atmospheric quality that 80s synthesizer music brought to supernatural sequences created perfect sonic complement to the visual design of the Upside Down and related otherworldly elements, with electronic textures that felt both futuristic and slightly dated, providing ideal backdrop for environments that existed outside normal, temporal, and spatial boundaries. The synthesized sounds created sense of artificial intelligence and technological intervention that supported the series' themes about government experimentation and scientific manipulation of natural forces. The choice to emphasize analog synthesizer techniques over digital alternatives reflected commitment to period authenticity while creating sonic textures that possessed the warmth and imperfection that made electronic music feel human, rather than coldly mechanical. These subtle technical choices contributed to overall atmosphere that felt nostalgic rather than simply retro, connecting with audiences' emotional memories of how electronic music sounded during the era being depicted. The production techniques that Dixon and Stein employed drew from extensive knowledge of vintage synthesizer equipment and recording methods, requiring significant investment in period-appropriate instruments and studio techniques that could recreate authentic 80s electronic music rather than modern interpretations of vintage styles. This commitment to technical authenticity produced results that satisfied both casual listeners and knowledgeable enthusiasts who could recognize the difference between genuine period production and contemporary imitation. The sound design work that created atmospheric effects for the Upside Down required collaboration between musical composers and technical sound specialists who could blend synthesized elements with practical audio effects to create environments that felt both alien and believable. The layering of multiple audio elements created complex soundscapes that could suggest vast otherworldly spaces while maintaining clarity that allowed dialogue and action to remain comprehensible to audiences. The challenge of creating otherworldly audio environments that would remain effective across multiple episodes and seasons required development of consistent sonic vocabulary that could evolve and develop without losing its distinctive character or becoming repetitive through overuse. The audio team's success in maintaining freshness while preserving recognizable elements demonstrated sophisticated understanding of how sound contributes to world building and narrative continuity. The integration of practical sound effects with synthesized musical elements created hybrid audio landscapes that combined the immediacy and authenticity of recorded environmental sound with the emotional manipulation and atmospheric control that electronic music could provide. This blending of techniques produced results that felt both realistic and heightened, supporting audience immersion while providing dramatic enhancement that served storytelling goals. The streaming platform's impact on music discovery created opportunities for older songs to find new audiences through association with popular television content, demonstrating how modern distribution methods could revitalize cultural artifacts that might otherwise remain confined to their original historical contexts. The accessibility of music through digital platforms allowed viewers to immediately explore songs and artists that caught their attention during episodes, creating educational opportunities that traditional broadcasting could not provide. The generational differences in musical awareness meant that many younger viewers encountered classic songs for the first time through their use in Stranger Things, while older audiences rediscovered familiar music through fresh narrative contexts that provided new appreciation for songs they had known for decades. This cross-generational musical exchange created shared cultural experiences that transcended age boundaries while introducing historical musical content to contemporary audiences. The influence that the series' musical choices had on broader popular culture extended beyond individual song popularity to encompass renewed interest in synthesizer music and 80s electronic production techniques among contemporary musicians who drew inspiration from the show's sonic aesthetic. This cultural influence created ripple effects that affected music production trends, while validating artistic choices that had seemed risky or unfashionable before the series' success. The emotional power that musical memories possessed in both fictional and real contexts reflected universal human experiences of how songs become associated with specific moments, relationships, and feelings that can be instantly recalled through audio triggers. The series' exploration of this phenomenon provided audiences with recognition of their own musical associations while demonstrating how personal soundtrack could serve as emotional anchor during difficult or confusing periods. The careful balance between musical enhancement and narrative respect required sophisticated understanding of how audio elements could support storytelling without overwhelming other production elements or manipulating audience emotions in ways that felt dishonest or exploitative. The success of the series' musical integration demonstrated how thoughtful collaboration between composers, music supervisors, and creative teams could produce results that honored both musical and visual artistic visions while serving shared storytelling goals. The technical artistry required to create Stranger Things' distinctive visual effects represented a careful balancing act between ambitious storytelling goals and practical production constraints, with nearly half of the first season's finale composed of visual effects, shots that pushed the boundaries of what television budgets typically allowed, while maintaining the authentic aesthetic quality that distinguished the series from other supernatural productions. This unprecedented reliance on effects Work for a streaming television series required innovative approaches to resource management and creative problem solving that would establish new standards for how complex visual storytelling could be achieved within episodic production schedules. The timeline pressures that characterized the visual effects completion process created working conditions that tested the limits of post-production capabilities, with effects shots being submitted to Netflix just weeks before episodes were scheduled to launch on the streaming platform. This compressed schedule required extraordinary coordination between multiple effects houses and technical specialists who worked simultaneously on different elements of complex sequences while maintaining visual consistency and quality, standards that would satisfy both creative teams and audience expectations. The reality that many effects shots remained incomplete even as submission deadlines approached illustrated the ambitious scope of visual storytelling that the Duffer Brothers had envisioned, requiring technical teams to work with preliminary versions and placeholder elements while final details were refined and integrated into completed sequences. This workflow demanded exceptional trust and communication between creative and technical departments who had to make crucial decisions based on incomplete information while maintaining confidence that final results would justify the risks involved in such aggressive scheduling. The digital grain application process that gave the series its distinctive vintage film appearance required extensive post-production work that layered multiple texture elements over digitally captured footage to recreate the organic imperfections and color characteristics that audiences associated with period-appropriate cinematography. This painstaking recreation of analog film properties through digital manipulation demonstrated the technical sophistication required to achieve nostalgic authenticity while working within modern production workflows that prioritized efficiency and cost control over traditional aesthetic approaches. The success of this hybrid technique validated the creative team's commitment to achieving specific visual goals, regardless of the technical complexity required, proving that audiences would respond positively to the investment in atmospheric authenticity, even when they might not consciously recognize the specific elements that contributed to their emotional response. The grain application became integral to the series' visual identity, while requiring ongoing technical refinement to maintain consistency across different shooting conditions and post-production facilities. The philosophical tension between practical effects, preferences, and television production timeline limitations created ongoing creative challenges that required constant negotiation between artistic vision and practical feasibility, with each decision about effects approaches carrying implications for both visual quality and production sustainability. The Duffer Brothers' stated preference for tangible effects work had to be balanced against the reality that television schedules left insufficient time for the extensive trial and error processes that practical effects typically required to achieve optimal results. This compromise between ideal and achievable approaches led to hybrid solutions that combined practical elements, wherever possible, with digital enhancement and completion techniques that could deliver required results within available time and budget constraints. The successful integration of these different approaches required sophisticated planning and coordination that anticipated how various elements would interact in final compositions while maintaining flexibility to adapt when practical. Limitations made original plans impossible to execute. The respect that this process generated for classic films that had achieved similar effects using purely practical techniques provided ongoing inspiration while highlighting the extraordinary skill and patience that earlier filmmakers had demonstrated in creating memorable visual effects without access to digital tools that contemporary productions took for granted. This historical perspective informed creative decisions while building appreciation for the craftsmanship that had established the visual standards that modern productions continued to reference and emulate. Kyle Lambert's poster artwork creation process drew direct inspiration from Drew Struzan's iconic 80s movie poster style, requiring extensive study of the painting techniques and compositional approaches that had defined an entire era of entertainment marketing, while adapting those traditional methods to contemporary production requirements and aesthetic sensibilities. Struzan's work on posters for Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, Star Wars, and countless other beloved films had established visual vocabulary that audiences instinctively associated with adventure, mystery, and nostalgic entertainment value. The decision to commission hand-painted poster artwork rather than relying on digital composition and photographic manipulation reflected the production's ongoing commitment to authentic vintage aesthetics that honored the artistic traditions of the era being depicted. This investment in traditional artistic techniques required finding artists who possessed both technical painting skills and contemporary understanding of how poster imagery would be used across multiple media platforms and marketing applications. Lambert's development of his poster painting technique through the creation of 6 individual canvases as gifts for principal cast members provided valuable practice and experimentation that informed his approach to the primary promotional artwork, demonstrating how personal creative projects could serve dual purposes as both artistic exploration and practical preparation for commercial applications. This iterative process allowed him to refine his approach while creating meaningful personal gifts that honored the collaborative relationships that made the production successful. The individual cast portraits that emerged from this process captured both the nostalgic poster aesthetic that the series required and the specific personalities and character qualities that made each performer unique, creating artwork that functioned as both promotional material and genuine artistic interpretation of the creative work that cast and crew had invested in the production. These personal artworks became treasured mementos while serving as prototypes for the larger marketing campaign that would introduce the series to potential audiences. The technical challenges involved in recreating Struzan's distinctive painting style required extensive study of brushwork techniques, color application methods, and compositional approaches that had been developed through decades of commercial illustration experience. Lambert's success in adapting these traditional techniques to contemporary subject matter while maintaining authenticity demonstrated the ongoing relevance of classical artistic training in digital media environments that might seem to have eliminated the need for such specialized skills. The green screen challenges that the production encountered during location shooting reflected the broader difficulty of integrating fantastical elements into realistic environments while maintaining visual coherence that would support audience belief in impossible events. The success of these integration efforts required careful planning during principal photography to ensure that lighting conditions, camera angles, and performer blocking would support post-production work that might not be completed until months after original filming had concluded. The practical set solutions that were developed to minimize reliance on digital environments demonstrated creative problem-solving that achieved impressive visual results while reducing post-production complexity and costs that might otherwise have exceeded budget limitations. These hybrid approaches combined constructed set elements with selective digital extension and enhancement to create environments that felt expansive and otherworldly, while remaining grounded in tangible elements that actors could interact with naturally. The Upside Down's distinctive floating particle atmosphere required coordination between multiple technical departments who had to create environmental effects that would register convincingly on camera while remaining safe and manageable for performers working within the altered environments. The low-tech solutions that emerged from this challenge involved manual particle distribution and fan-based circulation systems that created organic-looking atmospheric effects without requiring expensive digital simulation or complex mechanical apparatus. The behind-the-scenes reality of these particle effects involved crew members positioned outside camera range, using handheld fans and manual agitation techniques to create movement patterns that appeared natural and purposeful when captured by cameras, but looked decidedly artificial and, quote, mechanical to anyone observing the actual production process. This contrast between production reality and final visual results illustrated how successful special effects often emerged from creative improvisation rather than sophisticated technical equipment. The careful balance between retro aesthetics and modern production capabilities required ongoing evaluation of which technical approaches would best serve specific creative goals, while remaining feasible within production constraints and timeline requirements. The success of this balance demonstrated how contemporary productions could honor historical aesthetic traditions while taking advantage of modern technical capabilities that could enhance rather than replace traditional filmmaking approaches. The budget constraints that forced creative solutions often produced more memorable and distinctive results than unlimited resources might have achieved, requiring technical teams to develop innovative approaches that maximized visual impact through clever application of limited materials and equipment, rather than expensive, high-end alternatives that might have been less creative in their execution. These economical innovations often became signature elements that contributed to the series' distinctive visual character. The evolution from the first season's technical limitations to the expanded capabilities available in later seasons demonstrated how production success could create opportunities for more ambitious visual storytelling while maintaining the aesthetic principles and creative approaches that had made the original work effective. This growth in technical resources allowed for more complex effect sequences without abandoning the practical first philosophy that had distinguished the series from other supernatural television productions. The collaborative relationships between effects, artists, cinematographers, and directors required ongoing communication and creative flexibility as complex sequences evolved through multiple iterations and refinements that responded to both technical discoveries and creative insights that emerged during the production process. The success of these collaborations depended on shared commitment to visual quality and storytelling effectiveness that transcended individual technical specializations. The invisible nature of successful visual effects work meant that audiences would ideally remain unaware of the extensive technical effort required to create seamless integration of practical and digital elements, with the most successful effects being those that felt so natural and believable that viewers never questioned their authenticity or wondered about the production techniques involved in their creation. The lasting influence that the series' visual effects approaches had on other television productions demonstrated how innovative solutions to technical challenges could establish new industry standards while proving that streaming platform content could achieve cinematic quality visual effects without requiring feature film budgets or production schedules that traditional television workflows could not accommodate. The technical legacy of these visual effects innovations continued to influence how supernatural and science fiction television series approached the integration of practical and digital techniques, validating hybrid approaches that honored traditional filmmaking craftsmanship while embracing contemporary digital capabilities that could enhance rather than replace fundamental storytelling techniques that connected with audiences through authentic emotional experience rather than pure technical spectacle. The evolution of character development throughout Stranger Things production history revealed how creative flexibility and willingness to adapt original concepts could transform good ideas into exceptional storytelling, with some of the series' most beloved elements emerging from organic discoveries about performer capabilities and audience responses, rather than predetermined creative decisions that remained unchanged throughout the development process. These character transformations demonstrated how successful television writing required ongoing collaboration between creators, performers, and audience feedback that could reshape fundamental story elements when such changes served the larger narrative vision. Will Byers' original role in Bob Newby's tragic demise represented a much darker character trajectory that would have fundamentally altered audience perception of the sensitive, artistic boy whose victimization by supernatural forces had generated enormous sympathy and protective instincts among viewers, who saw him as innocent victim rather than potential perpetrator of violence against beloved characters. The planned storyline would have required Will to kill Bob during some form of supernatural possession or influence, creating moral complexity that might have compromised his status as purely sympathetic character deserving of rescue and protection. The decision to abandon this storyline reflected the creative team's growing understanding of how Will's character functioned within the larger ensemble dynamic, recognizing that his value as representation of childhood vulnerability and artistic sensitivity would be damaged by association with violence against characters that audiences had grown to love and respect. The preservation of Will's innocence allowed his character to serve as emotional anchor for storylines about trauma recovery and supernatural connection, without the moral ambiguity that would have resulted from direct responsibility for beloved character deaths. This change also protected Bob Newby's character development from being overshadowed by the circumstances of his death, allowing his heroic sacrifice to stand as genuine expression of love and courage, rather than tragic result of supernatural manipulation that removed agency from both characters involved in the deadly encounter. The alternative approach that was ultimately chosen honored both characters' essential natures while creating opportunities for more complex exploration of supernatural influence and resistance. The revelation that Eleven was originally conceived as male character illustrated how fundamental casting decisions could ripple through entire narrative structures, potentially altering romantic relationships, family dynamics, and thematic exploration in ways that would have created a completely different series despite sharing the same basic supernatural premise and 80s setting. A male Eleven would have eliminated the romantic connection with Mike Wheeler that became central to both characters' development, while creating entirely different dynamics around government exploitation of psychic children. The alternative romantic storyline that would have paired Mike with Hopper's deceased daughter Sarah represented a much more tragic and complex emotional landscape that would have required significant changes to Hopper's character arc and the way his past trauma informed his protective instincts toward the supernatural children in his care. This relationship would have created uncomfortable psychological territory around Hopper's feelings about Mike's connection to his lost daughter, while potentially compromising the father-daughter relationship that developed between Hopper and Eleven. The gender change that preserved Eleven's female identity allowed for exploration of themes around female power, agency, and exploitation that added important social commentary to the supernatural storyline, while creating opportunities for the strong female characters that became hallmarks of the series' approach to ensemble storytelling. The decision also preserved the romantic innocence and first love dynamics that provided emotional grounding for supernatural adventures, while allowing young audiences to see relationships that reflected their own experiences and aspirations. Steve Harrington's transformation from irredeemable antagonist to beloved ensemble member represented perhaps the most dramatic character evolution in the series' history, demonstrating how the right performer could inspire writers to discover depths and possibilities that original characterization had not anticipated or explored. Joe Keery's natural charisma and comedic timing made it impossible for creators to maintain their original vision of Steve as pure obstacle to protagonist goals, opening opportunities for character development that ultimately enriched the entire series. The original Montauk pilot version of Steve apparently pushed his negative qualities to extremes that would have made redemption difficult or impossible, creating a character whose behavior exceeded typical teenage selfishness and insecurity to enter territory that audiences would find unforgivable, regardless of subsequent character growth or recognition of past mistakes. The decision to pull back from these extremes reflected understanding that effective antagonists required enough humanity to make eventual character development believable and satisfying. The transformation process that converted Steve from antagonist to hero required careful scripting that acknowledged his past behavior while creating opportunities for genuine growth and redemption that felt earned rather than arbitrary or convenient for plot purposes. This character evolution became template for how complex personalities could develop across multiple seasons while maintaining internal consistency and emotional authenticity that honored both original characterization and subsequent development. The unexpected chemistry that emerged between Steve and Dustin during their Season 2 pairing created one of the series' most beloved relationships, while demonstrating how organic character interactions could generate storytelling opportunities that writers had not initially planned or anticipated. This mentor-mentee dynamic provided both characters with development opportunities while creating comedic and emotional moments that enhanced overall ensemble dynamics. Max Mayfield's planned death during Season 4 would have eliminated one of the series' most compelling character arcs while depriving audiences of representation that had particular resonance for viewers dealing with family, dysfunction, trauma, and the challenge of forming healthy relationships despite difficult backgrounds. Her survival reflected creative recognition of how important her character had become to fans who identified with her struggles and appreciated her strength in facing both supernatural and mundane challenges. The decision to spare Max while still subjecting her to significant trauma and consequences created opportunities for exploration of recovery, healing, and resilience that would have been lost if her character had been eliminated entirely. This approach allowed the series to maintain stakes and consequences while preserving character development possibilities that could be explored in future seasons, demonstrating how creative teams could balance dramatic impact with ongoing storytelling potential. Bob Newby's evolution from potential antagonist to beloved hero illustrated how performer choices and audience response could transform minor characters into significant emotional centers that enhanced rather than distracted from primary storylines. Sean Astin's natural likability and genuine enthusiasm for the role inspired writers to develop Bob's character far beyond his original conception as potential obstacle or complication in Joyce's life, ultimately creating one of the series' most purely heroic and selfless characters. The original concept that would have made Bob more similar to Lonnie Byers would have created repetitive family dysfunction while depriving Joyce of the genuine love and support that Bob's character provided during her ongoing struggles with supernatural threats and single parenthood. The alternative approach that emphasized Bob's positive qualities allowed exploration of healthy adult relationships while providing Will with positive male role model whose presence enriched rather than complicated family dynamics. Bob's heroic sacrifice gained additional emotional weight through audiences' investment in his relationship with Joyce and his genuine care for her children, creating death scene that felt tragic and meaningful, rather than merely functional for plot advancement. This character development demonstrated how even supporting roles could generate significant emotional impact when developed with care and respect for their narrative function and thematic importance. The roller skate weapon modification that replaced the originally planned golf club in Eleven's confrontation with Angela reflected practical considerations about filming locations while creating more authentic, period-appropriate conflict that felt consistent with the school setting and teenage social dynamics being explored. The golf club scenario would have required mini-golf location that proved problematic due to noise interference from nearby interstate traffic that would have compromised audio recording quality. This change also created more realistic scenario for teenage confrontation while maintaining the shocking violence that demonstrated Eleven's ongoing struggles with emotional regulation and appropriate response to social conflict. The roller skate assault felt more spontaneous and situationally authentic than premeditated golf club attack would have appeared, creating incident that seemed to emerge from immediate emotional response rather than calculated revenge planning. Eleven's planned mercy killing of her mother Terry represented much darker exploration of family trauma and impossible choices that would have added significant psychological weight to storylines already dealing with government, experimentation, childhood abuse, and supernatural manipulation. This storyline would have forced Eleven to confront the limits of her ability to help those she loved while making active choice to end suffering that could not be healed or relieved through conventional means. The decision to abandon this storyline preserved Terry's character as ongoing reminder of government abuse, while allowing exploration of different aspects of family trauma and recovery that did not require Eleven to bear responsibility for her mother's death. This change maintained focus on government accountability for Terry's condition while avoiding psychological territory that might have been too complex or disturbing for younger audiences who formed a significant portion of the Cars series viewership. Billy Hargrove's backstory additions that were suggested by Dacre Montgomery demonstrated how performer insight could enhance character development while providing context that made antagonistic behavior more understandable without excusing or justifying harmful actions toward other characters. Montgomery's understanding that effective villains required comprehensible motivation led to exploration of family abuse and toxic masculinity that added depth to character who might otherwise have remained one-dimensional. Obstacle. The domestic violence storyline that explained Billy's aggressive behavior created opportunities for examination of how trauma cycles perpetuate across generations while maintaining clear distinction between understanding harmful behavior and accepting it as inevitable or excusable. This approach allowed audiences to feel sympathy for Billy's situation, while recognizing that his treatment of others remained unacceptable, regardless of his own victimization. The improvised elements that Montgomery brought to Billy's characterization, including spontaneous actions and dialogue choices that felt authentic to the character's psychology and background, demonstrated how prepared performers could enhance scripted material through genuine understanding of their characters' motivations and behavioral patterns. These improvisational moments required trust between actors and directors while creating opportunities for character development that emerged from performance rather than predetermined writing. The Steve and Dustin babysitter subplot that emerged during Season 2 production represented creative adaptation that transformed production necessity into beloved storyline, demonstrating how flexible writing teams could convert practical challenges into narrative opportunities that enhanced rather than compromised overall storytelling effectiveness. The pairing emerged from scheduling and story structure needs rather than original creative planning, yet became one of the series' most popular and emotionally resonant relationship developments. This unexpected partnership provided both characters with growth opportunities, while creating comedic and dramatic moments that enriched the overall ensemble dynamic without requiring extensive setup or explanation that might have felt forced or artificial. The natural chemistry between Joe Keery and Gaten Matarazzo made the relationship immediately believable while providing template for how unlikely friendships could develop through shared challenges and mutual respect. The success of this improvised storyline validated creative approaches that remained open to organic developments and unexpected opportunities, rather than adhering rigidly to predetermined plans that might not serve the evolving needs of characters and narrative as they developed through collaborative creative process involving writers, directors, and performers working together towards shared storytelling goals. The balance between planned character development and organic creative discovery required ongoing evaluation of which elements served the larger narrative vision, while remaining true to established character traits and relationship dynamics that audiences had grown to understand and appreciate. This balance demonstrated how successful television writing could adapt and evolve while maintaining internal consistency and emotional authenticity that honored both creative vision and collaborative input from all participants in the Kamen Tri storytelling process. The intricate web of references and Easter eggs woven throughout Stranger Things created layers of meaning that rewarded careful observation, while honoring the rich tradition of genre storytelling that had inspired the series by creation, transforming what might have been simple nostalgia exercise into sophisticated dialogue between contemporary creativity and historical influences that enriched both the immediate viewing experience and broader cultural appreciation for the artistic works being referenced. These hidden connections operated on multiple levels simultaneously, providing surface entertainment for casual viewers, while offering deeper satisfaction for audiences who possessed the cultural knowledge necessary to recognize and appreciate the careful homages embedded throughout the narrative. Structure. The X-Men issue 134 that Will and Dustin race to obtain during the opening episodes carried thematic significance that extended far beyond simple period-appropriate comic book selection, as this particular issue depicted the transformation of psychic mutant Jean Grey into the cosmically powerful and morally ambiguous Dark Phoenix, following her exposure to torture and psychological manipulation by hostile forces. The parallel between Jean Grey's corruption through external influence and Eleven's potential for similar transformation through government experimentation and supernatural exposure provided subtle foreshadowing that prepared attentive audiences for character developments that would unfold across multiple seasons. The Dark Phoenix storyline's exploration of how unlimited power could corrupt even fundamentally good individuals resonated deeply with Eleven's journey from innocent victim to potentially dangerous force whose abilities exceeded her emotional maturity and moral development. The comic book reference suggested that the series would grapple with questions about power, responsibility, and the thin line between heroism and destruction that separated those who used extraordinary abilities to protect others from those who might be consumed by the very forces they attempted to control. This literary parallel also reflected the series' sophisticated approach to character development, suggesting that simple categories of good and evil would prove inadequate for understanding the complex moral landscape that supernatural abilities created for individuals who possessed power that exceeded normal human limitations. The X-Men reference prepared audiences for ethical complexity while honoring the comic book tradition of exploring social issues through superhero narratives. Silent Hill's Alessa Gillespie provided another crucial reference point that connected Eleven's traumatic background to established horror mythology, while demonstrating how contemporary storytelling could draw from video game narratives as readily as from literary or cinematic sources. Alessa's combination of psychic abilities and childhood trauma created direct parallel to Eleven's situation, while suggesting that both characters represented archetypal figures whose suffering had transformed them into conduits for supernatural forces that exceeded their ability to control or understand. The reference to Alessa through Hopper's casual mention of Eleanor Gillespie being attacked by an owl created subtle connection that horror fans would recognize, while remaining invisible to audiences unfamiliar with the Silent Hill franchise. This approach demonstrated how references could serve multiple purposes simultaneously, providing insider knowledge for devoted genre fans while functioning as realistic small-town detail for viewers who interpreted the comment literally rather than symbolically. The psychological parallels between Alessa and Eleven extended beyond supernatural abilities to encompass shared experiences of institutional abuse, social isolation, and the transformation of victimization into dangerous power that could threaten both perpetrators and innocent bystanders. These connections suggested that both characters represented warnings about how childhood trauma could manifest in destructive ways when combined with abilities that exceeded normal human limitations. The Lord of the Rings reference embedded in Castle Byers' password, Radagast, reflected Will's literary interests while connecting his safe space to fantasy traditions that celebrated the power of nature and wisdom over technological domination and industrial destruction. Radagast the Brown's role as protector of natural environments and animal life provided appropriate symbolic protection for a sanctuary built by a child who appreciated art, creativity, and gentle alternatives to the aggressive masculinity that often characterized small-town expectations for young boys. This password choice also reflected the series' understanding of how children create private worlds that draw from beloved stories and characters, using fictional references to establish identity and belonging within communities that might not fully appreciate their interests or perspectives. Will's choice of obscure Tolkien reference demonstrated both his literary sophistication and his need to create boundaries around spaces where he could exist without judgment or expectation to conform to conventional social roles. The Witness film homage that appeared when Eleven examined Will's photograph created visual parallel to Harrison Ford's character studying Danny Glover's image, connecting the series to thriller tradition while suggesting that both scenes involved characters attempting to understand threats that exceeded their immediate comprehension. This reference operated through visual composition rather than dialogue or plot structure, requiring audiences to recognize cinematographic similarity rather than narrative connection. The subtlety of this reference demonstrated how the series incorporated influences at multiple levels of production, from broad thematic parallels to specific shot compositions that honored classic films while serving contemporary storytelling needs. These visual homages required sophisticated understanding of film history, while remaining accessible to audiences who might not recognize the specific sources but would still appreciate the emotional and dramatic effectiveness of carefully composed imagery. Stephen King's pervasive influence on the series extended beyond general atmospheric inspiration to include specific narrative references that connected individual episodes to particular works within King's extensive catalogue of supernatural horror and small-town gothic fiction. The library article about LSD experiments that Hopper discovered served as direct homage to Firestarter, while establishing plot information necessary for understanding government experimentation that had created characters like Eleven and Bayern, her laboratory siblings. The episode title, The Body, drew directly from King's short story that had been adapted into the film Stand By Me, creating explicit connection between the series and one of its primary influences, while suggesting that the discovery of Will's apparent corpse would serve similar function to the dead body that motivated the young protagonists of King's Story. This reference operated on both literal and metaphorical levels, as both stories involved children confronting mortality and adult corruption while discovering inner strength through mutual support and loyalty. The railroad walking sequence that recreated one of Stand By Me's most iconic visual elements provided direct homage to the film that had served as audition material for many of the series' young actors while creating symbolic representation of the journey into unknown territory that characterized both stories. This visual reference honored the influence while serving independent narrative purpose, demonstrating how effective homages could function as both tribute and original storytelling element. The horror movie trope inversions that characterized many of the series' most effective dramatic moments reflected sophisticated understanding of genre conventions and audience expectations, allowing creators to surprise viewers who thought they could predict story developments based on familiarity with traditional horror narratives. The decision to kill Barb rather than Nancy subverted conventional expectations about which characters would survive supernatural encounters, while commenting on how arbitrary and unfair such selection could be. This approach to genre expectations required delicate balance between honoring traditions that had made horror effective and challenging assumptions that might make contemporary audiences feel too comfortable or confident about character safety. The series succeeded in creating genuine suspense by establishing that conventional horror movie logic would not necessarily apply to character survival, forcing audiences to remain emotionally invested in all characters rather than assuming that certain types would be automatically protected. The Dungeons & Dragons monster mythology that provided names and conceptual framework for supernatural threats created bridge between fantasy gaming culture and horror television that honored both traditions while making supernatural elements accessible to audiences familiar with role-playing game concepts. The Demogorgon's status as Prince of Demons in gaming mythology provided established framework for understanding its power level and hostile intentions, while suggesting that other creatures might possess similar hierarchical relationships and supernatural capabilities. This gaming influence extended beyond simple name adoption to encompass strategic thinking about how different types of supernatural entities might interact with human characters and physical environments, drawing from decades of game design that had explored these relationships through collaborative storytelling and rule-based interaction systems. The series benefited from this established mythology while adapting gaming concepts to television narrative requirements that demanded character development and emotional engagement beyond tactical problem solving. The careful balance between homage and originality required creators to honor influences while creating something distinctive that could stand as independent artistic achievement rather than mere compilation of references to other works. The success of this approach demonstrated how contemporary storytelling could engage with cultural history while producing new narratives that contributed to, rather than simply recycling existing artistic traditions. The 1980s movie references that permeated every aspect of production design, character development, and narrative structure created comprehensive period atmosphere, while connecting the series to specific films that had defined childhood experience for multiple generations of viewers. These references operated through visual styling, character archetypes, plot structures, and thematic concerns that reproduced the emotional register of 80s entertainment, while addressing contemporary social issues and production values. The E.T. influences that appeared in bicycle chase sequences and child-adult relationship dynamics provided template for how supernatural elements could be grounded in recognizable family and friendship relationships, while maintaining sense of wonder and discovery that characterized the most effective fantasy storytelling. These influences suggested that extraordinary events could emerge from ordinary circumstances when viewed through eyes of characters who remained open to possibility and magic. The Jaws references that appeared in Hopper's characterization and the series' approach to revealing supernatural threats demonstrated understanding of how suspense could be created through suggestion and partial revelation, rather than constant, explicit display of monsters and dangers. This approach honored Spielberg's masterful use of audience imagination, while adapting those techniques to television format that required sustained mystery across multiple episodes rather than single film experience. The integration of contemporary social commentary with period-appropriate reference points created opportunities for exploration of how historical issues continued to influence contemporary life, while honoring the artistic works that had previously addressed similar concerns through different cultural contexts. This approach demonstrated how effective homage could serve educational and artistic purposes simultaneously, introducing audiences to important cultural works while using those influences to illuminate ongoing social challenges and opportunities. The successful balance between reference and innovation established template for how contemporary creators could engage with cultural inheritance while producing original works that honored influences without being overwhelmed by them. The series demonstrated that sophisticated audience knowledge could be assumed and rewarded while maintaining accessibility for viewers who might not possess extensive familiarity with referenced materials, creating entertainment that operated effectively across different levels of cultural literacy and genre expertise. The cultural phenomenon that emerged from Stranger Things transcended simple entertainment success to create genuine social and economic impact that demonstrated how thoughtfully crafted storytelling could influence consumer behavior, corporate marketing strategies, and broader cultural conversations about nostalgia, childhood trauma, and the power of authentic representation in mainstream media. The series' ability to generate real-world effects that extended far beyond viewership numbers illustrated how contemporary streaming platforms could create cultural moments that rivaled traditional broadcast television's historical capacity for shaping public discourse and commercial trends. The 15% worldwide increase in Eggo waffle sales following the first season's premiere provided perhaps the most tangible evidence of how fictional character preferences could translate into measurable consumer behavior changes, demonstrating that audiences' emotional connection to Eleven's simple food pleasures had motivated them to incorporate her dietary choices into their own lives. This phenomenon reflected deeper psychological processes through which viewers sought to maintain connection to beloved characters by adopting their habits, preferences, and symbolic associations in ways that extended entertainment experience beyond passive consumption into active lifestyle integration. The waffle sales surge also illustrated how product, placement, and organic storytelling integration could create more powerful marketing effects than traditional advertising approaches, as audiences responded to Eleven's genuine enjoyment of Eggo waffles with purchasing behavior that felt like personal choice rather than commercial manipulation. The authenticity of the character's relationship with the product created emotional association that traditional advertising could rarely achieve, validating entertainment industry trends toward integrated marketing that served storytelling goals while generating commercial benefits. The Kellogg Company's response to this unexpected sales boom demonstrated how established corporations could capitalize on cultural phenomena that emerged independently of their marketing efforts, creating promotional campaigns and product variations that acknowledged the series' influence while extending their brand association with popular culture moments that enhanced rather than competed with their existing advertising strategies. This corporate adaptability reflected sophisticated understanding of how contemporary media consumption created opportunities for brands to participate in cultural conversations without appearing intrusive or opportunistic. The Department of Energy's unprecedented decision to issue public statements, clarifying their actual mission and responsibilities following the series' portrayal of government laboratories conducting supernatural experiments, illustrated how fictional narratives could generate real-world concerns that required official response from institutions depicted in entertainment media. The department's felt need to distinguish their legitimate scientific work from the horrific experimentation portrayed in the series demonstrated both the show's cultural penetration and the potential for fiction to shape public perception of government agencies and scientific research. This official response also reflected contemporary anxieties about government transparency and accountability that made audiences particularly receptive to narratives suggesting institutional corruption and cover-ups, requiring real government agencies to address fictional accusations that resonated with historical examples of unethical experimentation and classified research programs that had been revealed through congressional investigations and Freedom of Information Act disclosures. The Department of Energy's Public Relations Challenge demonstrated how effective storytelling could tap into legitimate concerns about government overreach while creating fictional scenarios that felt plausible enough to require official denial. The Justice for Barb movement that emerged from fan frustration with the character's unceremonious death and subsequent neglect by other characters within the narrative created grassroots cultural phenomenon that demonstrated how audience investment in minor characters could generate significant social media engagement and cultural commentary about representation, friendship, loyalty, and narrative priorities in contemporary entertainment. This fan activism reflected deeper concerns about how supporting characters, particularly those representing ordinary rather than exceptional individuals, were valued and remembered within fictional narratives. Shannon Purser's transformation from unknown actress working at a movie theater to cultural icon and Emmy nominee through her brief but memorable portrayal demonstrated how authentic character representation could create lasting impact that exceeded screen time or narrative prominence, validating creative approaches that treated all characters with dignity and respect regardless of their structural function within larger story arcs. Her subsequent unemployment due to fan recognition at her service industry job illustrated both the positive and disruptive effects that sudden fame could create for individuals whose lives were fundamentally altered by unexpected cultural phenomena. The Emmy nomination that Purser received for her guest performance validated the cultural significance of her character while demonstrating how television awards recognition could extend to supporting performances that captured audience imagination and generated meaningful cultural conversation about friendship, loyalty, and social dynamics among teenage characters who represented authentic rather than idealized versions of adolescent experience. The series' broader influence on 80s nostalgia trends extended beyond specific product sales to encompass fashion choices, music preferences, and aesthetic sensibilities that shaped retail marketing, interior design trends, and cultural production across multiple entertainment and lifestyle industries that recognized and capitalized on renewed interest in vintage styles and retro cultural references that the series had helped popularize among contemporary audiences who had not experienced the original era. This nostalgic influence created opportunities for brands and cultural institutions to reintroduce historical products and aesthetic approaches that might otherwise have remained confined to niche vintage markets, demonstrating how successful entertainment could create broader cultural appetite for historical styles and references that supported both preservation of cultural heritage and commercial exploitation of cyclical fashion and design trends. that brought past aesthetics into contemporary contexts. Netflix's strategic investment in original programming received significant validation through the series' success, demonstrating how streaming platforms could compete with traditional television networks by supporting creative projects that might have been considered too risky or unconventional for broadcast television's advertising-dependent business model. The series' global popularity provided evidence that international audiences would embrace American-produced content that combined universal themes with specific cultural references, supporting Netflix's expansion into international markets. The success also validated streaming platform approaches to content release and promotion that differed significantly from traditional television scheduling and marketing strategies, demonstrating how binge-viewing formats and social media engagement could create cultural phenomena without relying on traditional broadcast schedules and appointment viewing that had historically driven television success and cultural impact. The career transformation that the series provided for its young actors illustrated how contemporary entertainment industry could create opportunities for child performers that extended beyond traditional child actor trajectories, with cast members developing significant social media followings and cultural influence that positioned them as voices for their generation on social issues and cultural topics that extended beyond their entertainment work. Millie Bobby Brown's development from relatively unknown performer to international celebrity and social activist demonstrated how the series had created platform for young people to engage with political and social issues while maintaining their artistic careers, validating approaches to celebrity that combined entertainment success with meaningful social engagement and public service that honored both personal values and professional responsibilities. The mental health awareness that emerged through the series' honest portrayal of trauma, family dysfunction, and childhood psychological development created opportunities for public conversation about issues that had historically been treated as private family matters or individual psychological problems, rather than social issues requiring community support and institutional response. The characters' various struggles with post-traumatic stress, family abuse, and social isolation provided relatable examples that helped normalize discussion of mental health challenges among young people. Will's portrayal of childhood trauma and recovery offered representation for viewers who had experienced similar challenges, while demonstrating how supportive community relationships could facilitate healing and personal growth. Despite ongoing struggles with psychological effects of traumatic experiences, this representation helped validate experiences of audience members while providing hope for recovery and resilience that honored both the reality of trauma and the possibility of healing through authentic relationships and community support. The destigmatization of physical differences through Dustin's character and Gaten Matarazzo's cleidocranial dysplasia created representation for young people with similar conditions while educating broader audiences about medical conditions that affected appearance and development in ways that traditional media often ignored or misrepresented. This inclusive casting approach demonstrated how entertainment could serve educational purposes while creating opportunities for underrepresented communities to see themselves reflected in mainstream popular culture. The positive response from viewers with similar conditions validated the decision to incorporate Matarazzo's real experience into his character, while demonstrating how authentic representation could create meaningful connection and community support for individuals who might otherwise feel isolated by their differences from conventional appearance and ability standards that dominated mainstream entertainment representation. The fan community that developed around the series created online and offline social networks that extended viewing experience into ongoing cultural participation through fan fiction, artwork, theoretical discussion, and social activism that demonstrated how contemporary entertainment consumption could generate genuine community building and social engagement among people who might otherwise have limited opportunities for connection around shared interests and values. These fan communities provided spaces for discussion of complex social and political issues that the series addressed, while creating opportunities for intergenerational dialogue between viewers who had lived through the depicted historical period and younger audiences encountering these cultural references for the first time. This cross-generational engagement created educational opportunities while validating both historical memory and contemporary interpretation of past cultural moments. The merchandise and brand partnership opportunities that emerged from the series' success created economic ecosystem that extended cultural impact into retail and manufacturing sectors that developed products ranging from clothing and accessories to food items and home decor that allowed fans to incorporate series references into their daily lives, while supporting continued production and development of related entertainment content. The licensing agreements that enabled these commercial partnerships demonstrated how successful entertainment properties could generate revenue streams that extended far beyond initial production costs, while creating opportunities for bases, ongoing fan engagement and cultural participation that maintained audience interest during extended periods between new episode releases and season premieres. The international cultural influence that the series achieved demonstrated how American-produced content could transcend national boundaries while addressing universal themes of friendship, family, and community that resonated across different cultural contexts and linguistic traditions. The series' success in non-English-speaking markets validated approaches to storytelling that combined specific cultural references with universal human experiences that could be appreciated by diverse international audiences. This global success created opportunities for cultural exchange and mutual understanding, while establishing American streaming platforms as significant forces in international entertainment distribution that could compete with traditional Hollywood film industry and broadcast television exports that had historically dominated global entertainment markets and cultural influence. The lasting impact that the series created for contemporary television production standards illustrated how breakthrough successes could establish new expectations for production quality, storytelling sophistication, and cultural responsibility that influenced industry practices beyond individual project success, creating pressure for other productions to achieve similar levels of authentic representation, technical excellence, and meaningful social engagement that honored both entertainment value and cultural contribution. And so we close our journey through the hidden corridors and secret chambers of Hawkins' creation, having wandered through the memories preserved behind every scene, every choice, every moment of magic that brought this beloved world to life. Like the children who found wonder in both the ordinary and extraordinary, we too find comfort in understanding how dreams become reality through the dedication of countless artists, creators, and dreamers. These facts and secrets, like particles floating between dimensions, connect us to the passion and creativity that transformed simple ideas into the phenomena we cherish. Whether it's the Duffer Brothers' persistence through rejection, the young actors' growth into icons, or the technical wizards who made monsters feel real, each detail represents someone's commitment to creating something special. Rest now, knowing that somewhere in the spaces between sleeping and waking, between reality and imagination, the magic continues. Let the gentle hum of synthesizers and the warmth of discovered secrets guide you to peaceful slumber. The facts will wait for morning, but the wonder that binds creators and fans together transcends time itself. Sweet dreams from the world behind Hawkins, where every story begins with someone believing in the impossible